Hello, and welcome to Untangle. Today we're going to get inside the head of somebody really interesting. His name is Casey Fenton. Now, the name Casey Fenton may not be familiar to you, but the word couchsurfing may be. So couchsurfing, kind of search back into the annals of the internet, and what do you find? You find really the birth of the sharing economy. Every time you jump into an Uber or sleep in somebody else's bed in an Airbnb, that's because of the work that couchsurfing did, beginning the sort of ground level of how we trust one another through the internet. So my guest, Casey Fenton, was the founder of couchsurfing. He's now working on an amazing project we'll hear all about, ego hacking. And I would like to welcome all of you inside the head of Casey Fenton.
Thanks, Ariel. It's a pleasure to be here today. This is a wonderful podcast, and I'm really excited to be here because I've been following you and following your company from the very beginning. I got one of the original Muse headsets, and I got to play around with it and use it over the course of time, and it's been something that's been really interesting and fun to use.
Oh, that's awesome. And we didn't actually know each other until many years after Muse was out and couchsurfing was a big thing. A mutual friend brought us together. And
that's right.
And so I would like everybody to learn a little bit more about your story and how couchsurfing came to be.
Sure. So imagine there I was many years ago, a very shy person. I grew up in a small town in Maine, and I wasn't sure if I might just live and die in that small town. I didn't know how I would escape. And I came up with this idea that if I could just start traveling, maybe I would learn something. And I started traveling a little bit for a broken heart. And I learned that travel started to really mend my broken heart. And it was in those travels back in, I think, 99, I traveled to Egypt, and I got to stay with locals on a little bench outside a mud hut. And then I went on a trip, and I kind of started getting the idea for this in couchsurfing. I registered the domain. And I noticed that when I was traveling, though, it was really hard for me to try to meet locals. I wasn't the kind of person who would go to a bar and just say, "Hey, how's it going? Let's talk and have an interesting conversation." That sounded like the most scary idea ever. So I and as a computer programmer, I would always think, there has to be some computer code that could solve this problem. In this case, the problem of disconnection, the problem of exploring and feeling alone. And so I started to say, what would happen if I could stay on a stranger's couch? And I registered this domain, CouchSurfing. And then I went on a cheap trip to Iceland. It was one of the most expensive countries in the world, still is now again. And when I was about to leave, I figured out, okay, this is so expensive. How can I make this trip possible? And I thought, I'm going to email some people and maybe I can stay on their couch. So I stumbled across the University of Iceland student directory, and I was able to, you have to type in a name to get a student's full name and email address. So back then, their security is a little bit more lax. So, of course, I typed in the only Icelandic name I knew, which was Bjork. And up came a bunch of Bjork Stevens daughters and, different last names. And I figured out that in Iceland and other places in Scandinavia, the last name is the father's first name. So it would be Stephen's daughter, Johan's daughter or something like this. So I was able to figure out, Johan or Stephen, that's another name. And I started plugging all these names, and I finally had 1,500 names and email addresses, put them in a database, and then wrote some PHP code to loop through them all and mail everybody and say, "Hi, I'm Casey. I'm coming to Iceland. Would you host me? Could I stay on your couch?" And ultimately, it was like a minimal viable product. It was like I was sending them my profile saying, "Would you trust me? Am I interesting? Can I stay with you?" And by the end of a couple of days, I had between 50 and 100 people. About 7% of the people I emailed said, "Yes, come stay on my couch and we'll drink vodka under the stars at my grandfather's cabin in the wilderness," or something like that. And then I had the opposite problem. I had to figure out who of all these cool Icelanders to go spend time with, and had the most amazing time hanging out with all kinds of people there. And I got on the plane thinking, how could I not travel like this every time? And my dreams of actually connecting with people and not being alone, it was finally happening.
Wow. So we tend to think, at the beginning of the internet, it was this place of both massive possibility because people could connect with anyone, and massive distrust and scariness. You didn't know if somebody was an avatar, who was real, who wasn't real. And you took this risk to email a whole bunch of people. What year is this, by the way? How long ago?
That was 1999, 2000, somewhere in there.
Amazing. So in 1999, you just emailed a whole bunch of people and said, this is my profile. This is me. Will you hang out with me? And
that's essentially what I did. Yes.
Yeah. Through this active programming, which, at the time we always think about as a solitary thing, it became a means of connection and a means of engagement with one another.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And that's began my transition from being a very shy, one of the shyest people in my class, just very, very, very quiet, kind of antisocial, or not really, just afraid to talk to people, really. And I switched school a couple times when I was young, so that made it even harder, felt a little even more lonely. And so as a computer programmer, I was able to transition from that, oh my God, do people even want to talk to me, to, wow, people actually do care about me, and I could get off a plane anywhere in the world, and maybe I'll be okay. People will care for me, and the world.
What a wonderful feeling.
That was a pretty great feeling, yeah.
So this was so amazing. Obviously, you wanted to share this with other people.
Absolutely. Like when I got the idea, I thought, oh, okay, clearly I want to do this. I just did this. Maybe I could just keep doing this. I could go do this in other countries. Then I thought, well, that's only going to be so powerful. It's going to be a lot more powerful if I can do this with other people. If we could all do this together, I had this feeling it's going to be exponentially more powerful. I didn't know if other people would actually want to do this. The feedback I was getting is mostly, that's completely insane. You can't do that. It's too dangerous. But then some people would say, that is the best idea I've ever heard. Yes, please. I had the same idea. Can I start using this? So, kind of a mixed feedback. But what I was thinking was, now I heard one of my friends had said, there's always people that will create problems in the world, and if you can be one of those people who solve problems, you'll always be valuable. You'll be in business, whatever. So I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the problem. And the problem was not that people didn't want to meet locals. It was that they thought it was just too dangerous and impossible to actually get what they wanted. Really, what they wanted, if you have said to people, if it was totally safe, would you like to meet really cool local people when you travel and have, a backstage pass to the world? Everyone would say, yeah, great idea. Love that idea. And then you say, okay, well, you want to do it? And I'd say, no, that's too dangerous. How can you trust a stranger? But what if you say, well, we happen to have 5 different safety systems in play, and you can see what other people said. You can see if they're vouched, they're verified, and, their references and so on, a lot of information where they last logged in from, a lot of safety information. So that was what really got people over the hump and over the of being completely risk averse. And, you have the early adopters, and they just jump right in and they start using it and growing it. And then you have the later adopters who, it just takes, they need more safety indicators, let's say. And so that's exactly what happened. And that's CouchSurfing started to grow, and, it's been tripling every year. I think we're up to about 20 million users now, somewhere in that range. So it just keeps growing and improving all the time. And I'm really thankful that a lot of people have a certain time in life where they just think, I need to see the world. I want the world to come to me. I want to know about the world. And so that's what CouchSurfing's about.
That's amazing. And I think if you asked most people right now, would you be willing to go and sleep on a stranger's couch in a strange country? They would say, no, that's crazy. But you say, would you go on Airbnb and book somebody else's unit? They'd say, oh yeah, I did that last week. And you're literally going and sleeping in a stranger's bed, in some case in a shared environment when they're still in the apartment with you.
Yeah. So in the early days, it was just that people didn't have a way to understand that if you have the right indicators online, that sure, you could go on a date with somebody that you don't know. You could get in a car with somebody you don't know. It's all about what did previous people who have encountered that person say. If they all said, yeah, this is good, then you feel safe. So it was just that back then people didn't have a model for that. And now it's kind of second nature. So yeah, if you said, would you go stay on somebody's couch? If 30 other people have said, yes, I stayed with that person and it was great, say yes. Would you go stay on a stranger's couch with no information at all? You just meet them at a train station and then they're just very, very random? Well, most people would say probably not, or it'd be only some people would do that. But again, with safety systems, you're able to take that leap of faith.
How did you come up with the safety systems? So, I mean, the safety systems that you're using are now used in so many models of how we demonstrate trust on the internet. How did you initially come up with them?
Well, it was out of necessity. Everybody kept saying, that's completely crazy. You can't do that. Right. So I was like, well, how can you do that? And so I thought, okay, the first thing you need is references. You need to say, I went and stayed with this person and they're cool. And that was fun. And then people want to collect those references. So that's kind of a bit of a payment in a way. But then I thought, okay, well, we also, at the very beginning, people can't, it's a catch-22, chicken and egg. How do they get a reference if they have no trust? Well, we'll put in something called verification so that you can you get yourself verified, and then people will be more likely to want to meet you for that first time. Also, vouching. We started off, it was a closed network. I had about 100 people sign up. And I thought to myself, this really isn't going anywhere. You can't get somebody to write a story about a closed network either. So what's the solution for this? What if we have a closed network within an open network? So you can see all the people that are vouched for in the core. And then they can bring other people, induct them into the closed network. Now it's an open. Now we have both problems solved. We have the closed and the open. They're all together. And there you go. There's a solution.
So this is something really interesting about humanity. And a lot of what we talk about in Untangle is, meditation, how we quiet our minds, how we become better humans. And when we think about this model of, an ideal humanity, it's one in which people are able to trust one another and we are all good people. What have you learned about, models of humanity through the creation of this?
Sure. Well, I've learned a lot about humans. I've learned a lot about myself. There's something to be said to be able to iterate, to go and meet new people time and time again. I had one person kind of walk up to me in Paris and he said, I used to be the most awkward person ever, but now I'm cool. I said, well, tell me more about that. Why are you cool? So, well, every night I had new people over and I make dinner for them and I just get to talk to them. I get to practice being cool. And after a while, I learned people love me. They think I'm actually funny. I'm a totally new person. Thank you so much. It's like, that's pretty great. That's kind of like my experience as well. A little different. And so when you think of a model for humanity, a lot of times I think we get stuck in our bubble. And so if we were told that we're one way or another, it's hard to get out of that way of being. And this, we're going into some of the topic of ego hacking right now. And part of ego hacking is this idea, and one of the core ideas is we become what other people say we are for social cohesion. Whatever they want us to be, effectively, we become that. It's like you become the 5 people you hang out with, something like that. So the model for humanity here is that where it's hard to break out of that mold of who you are and become that person maybe you want to be, or discover even who you want to be. And the CouchSurfing certainly allows people to try different, outfits on and say, okay, how does it feel to be this person or this person? Let me change my personality in this way. And then people say, oh, I really like that about you. Now you have people reinforcing that that's actually who you are, that they like that. So you become more of that. So I don't know if that's answered your question.
It was a really vague and general question. I was curious where you're going to take it. And it's a fascinating answer. Right. So I think so many of us are familiar with the situation where, you're, for example, in a family structure, you'll be one way with your friends and you'll feel great. And then you'll go home to your family and you'll feel terrible because they're still treating you like the child that they still think you are.
Right.
And so in so many of these situations, you become fixed with who you are. And it's only when you're able to try yourself in a new situation, try who you could become, that those changes that reflect who you really are. This is really you in all those scenarios.
Right.
But they're given space. Yeah,
absolutely. I completely agree. And I think a lot of people have had that experience. And then we want to break out. We want to, explore, experiment with our personality or an identity. But how do you do that? Especially, if your friends and your family are telling you or implying, or you at least believe that they are, that you are a certain person and you can't change, or that's just not open to you, you won't really change. I think my understanding, and we're getting into the ego hacking stuff a little bit here. My understanding of how the world works is that that thousands and thousands of years ago, maybe a million years ago, within the last million years, a few 100,000 years, let's say, we started to evolve, and we started to do this really weird thing called external identification. So in the old days, I think if somebody said, hey, I have this feather and I really like this feather, and I'm looking at it, that's a pretty cool feather, it's really beautiful. And somebody says, I don't like that feather, I wouldn't care. It wouldn't mean anything to me. But these days, if I have a feather and I've identified with it, somebody says, I don't like that feather, it's almost like they said they don't like me, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody says, I don't like CouchSurfing, right, I would say, oh, did you just say you don't like me? I don't like Muse. I don't like that company, right? Oh, what? Did you just say that about me? Right? Really? So we are identified, and it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, it's good that we externally identify because it creates diversity in the world, and it creates complex society. Modern society is built on this functionality, but it's a double-edged sword because it means we might, not feel good if somebody says, I don't like your thing, or the thing you're associated with. But in that diversity, it allows us to do all kinds of weird things like, you don't like my feather. Well, I don't like you, and I don't like things that you're associated with. And now I'm crossing a land bridge to North America. See you later, right? I'm going to travel in weird ways. I'm not just going to follow the resources that are available. So this is when we're trying to be mindful, when we're trying to have peace in our lives. This is one of the things that really gets us the most, that gives us the most pain and can torment us, is what do other people think? What do they think about us? And that can be hard to overcome. Does that make sense?
Totally. So, I mean, in the United States right now, we have a strong problem of identification, and people identify politically, and that causes all sorts of rifts and all sorts of assumptions that are made at the first second about who that person is, if you like them, if you don't like them.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, to take it even further, this idea of ego hacking is really, it's this idea that we all want to have impact in the world. We want to make a better world. At least we have a model for how it might be better. But it's not enough to just have the right plan. We need to be able to have impact. It's not about the plan. It's about the person who can create the plan. Do you have the capabilities, the skills, the personality to make that plan come true, or to make a good thing happen? If you don't, how do you become that? Now, if you're trapped in your family and your friends, in your social circle, and you're not able to become that person, you're not even able to figure out who that person is you want to be or need to be, well, you're not going to be able to make that plan happen, or those plans happen. So it's not the plan, it's the personality that matters.
That's interesting. So, people often feel like they're trapped within a position in work, and people won't see them or take them seriously. Right. Or they're, want to become an entrepreneur, but they, have a boring job and they don't know how to make the next step. They don't know how to take the risk. They don't know where to go. So is ego hacking something that you've created to help people move from one, I was going to call it a place in life, but maybe it's more of a perception of the self instead of skills?
That's right.
Become a different person with a different set of skills?
Absolutely. And people can follow along with this if they want. They could go to, bit.ly/ego hack, and they can follow along with a deck with some visuals and just a few words to go along with the slides. And I'll be talking to that a little bit here, not exactly in the same order or anything like that. But
okay, tell us how to ego hack.
Yeah. So here's how to ego hack. Okay. So the idea is we become the person other people want us to be for social cohesion. We have to. You're born being tormented by what other people think. That's a great thing. That means you have empathy and compassion, and you have all of those good socially cooperative instincts. But imagine people are born and they don't care about what other people think. They don't have any empathy and compassion. All that stuff just basically don't feel anything. That's called a sociopath. Mm-hmm. So we don't want that. I mean, we have up to 8% of our society are sociopaths. They just don't feel empathy and compassion the same way.
8%?
That's what I've heard. I've heard it's a large percentage, and that's a gradation. I mean, there's a small percentage that really don't feel that, but there are other people that they just fake it till they make it. They just don't feel it as strongly. But thank God, a large enough portion of people are and do feel this, that they're naturally born being tormented what other people think, and then they spend a lifetime trying to undo that and become less attached and more zen, whatever, different systems, all kinds of systems, try to help us not have this pain. But it's such a great thing for humanity because people are born and they're cooperating. They are born caring about what other people think and becoming a little bit closer to what other people want them to be. You've heard the research that says we become what the 5 people we hang out with, who the 5 people we hang out with are, right? It's pretty common. A lot of people have heard of this research. I would say it's just a little different than that. It's we become what the 5 people we hang out with are the people we hang out with, what they want us to be, not just who they are, but what they want us to be. There's a high correlation between what they want us to be and who they are, usually.
So stopping to think about that, I think about, my relationship with my husband, for example. Who or what does he want me to be? Am I becoming more of that? Absolutely. That's how our family functions more effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how he gets his needs fulfilled, by me becoming what he needs me to be.
Yeah, and it works in every direction in general.
Totally. When I think about my friends, some like my best friends and what they want for themselves from me, I'm different with my different friends.
Right. And, yes, exactly.
Yep.
And you're born and you care, and you might be even be, some people are more or less tormented by, are things okay? Are they okay with this other person? And you want to, not be as tormented. So ego hacking is a great way to understand how the idea of ego hacking. The problem is we don't understand human ego. We really don't know. Like you ask somebody, you say, how does human identity work? If you're like, I don't know. I don't know, we have identified with something, or nobody knows. And it affects every single thing we do in life, every moment, that whether we're feeling good or bad, and the decisions we're making, and yet we don't know anything about it. This is a big problem. And so the ego hacking framework, basically, it's just how does it work, and how can we use that to suffer less and help the people we love more? That's that simple.
Tell us, how does it work? How do we use it?
How does it work? So if it's true that we're becoming what other people want us to be, well, naturally it flows from there that the hack is figure out who you want to be and ask people to tell you that's how they see you.
Okay. Explain.
That's it. So it would be like, I really want to I have a good friend of mine. I was just trying some of this technology out, and this is like 20 years of me studying human psychology and identity, and like really caring about free will, and do I have free will, and if so, how, and so on. And so, and just really having a passion for this. So I came with a few years ago, I had this theory that just what we've been talking about. I was like, I wonder if this is true. So my friend, he just had a major accident. He had a surf accident. He was in Portugal. And I went to visit him and take care of him in the recovery after he had his heart surgery on his mitral valve. He said, boy, I'm not getting things done. It's just driving me crazy. Can you help me? I said, well, I had this idea. So I said, okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to start to tell you that that's who I see you as. In fact, it's going to be even more powerful if I have other people tell you this as well. And it won't matter if you know what I'm doing. It won't matter. And I'll get into that reason in a minute. So what we did is we took in an email. I explained to everyone in another email, this is what we're doing. And I was like, okay, I get it. We're going to basically tell our friend that we see him as somebody who's getting things done. And anytime we noticed any evidence of this, we're going to say, I see that, and reinforce that. And so great. So then I sent an email to my friend and all of our other friends and said, wow, he's really getting so much done. In fact, I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm not getting more things done, which is true. I was wishing I was getting more things done. And it's really amazing. And it reminds me of this article I read about getting things done. And isn't that incredible? And other friends are like, yeah, that's really great. I'm glad to hear it. That's good. Go, good work. And something really weird happened. It was like a snowball. He started to notice more things about him getting things done and being efficient and productive than he had in the past. He'd start to notice the evidence. It was like we had implanted a piece of his identity. And before, he just had the identity of, I'm not getting anything done. I'm no good at this. And he'd see evidence everywhere he went of whatever is in his identity. Because we're pattern matching machines, and we notice the patterns in our environment that reinforce, it's like confirmation bias, that reinforce whatever's in our identity, good or bad. So in a complex world, it's important to know what is in our identity. What is it programmed with? Because we will find more of that in a complex environment everywhere we go. Our pattern matching neural network, as you know all about neural networks are great pattern matching machines, and they will just find whatever your identity is programmed with. So it'll notice things in your environment, but it'll give precedence to anything in the identity. It puts it up higher right in your front of you. So just to wrap that piece up, our friend, I said, okay, so he started to snowball. He started to look and see all this evidence, and I started to reinforce it too. And I knew that he wanted to be that person. So anytime I'd notice any evidence, I'd call it out. Oh my God, you see that? That is evidence that you are that person. And then I even started to use more emotion when I'd say it, instead of saying, "Oh, you're really getting things done." I'd say, "You're getting things done. This is great, right?" And so why was I doing that? Why was I using emotion? And why was it that it would work even if he knew what I was doing, and even if the friends knew the trick, right?
The game, yeah.
Right. Why is that? So it just so happens, as you know, we have multiple areas of the brain, and this is we're using a very general statement that's, they're not as cordoned off, I think we know now, as like having, the neocortex and the limbic system and a more reptilian system. But generally speaking, people understand them this way. And so we think of, system 1 and system 2, thinking fast and slow, different models for how you want to look at this. And the system 2, the slower but more deliberate intellectual brain, it is really good at thinking and communicating with other people. But our identity doesn't live there. Our identity lives more in the emotional brain. And so really, usually the identity is running the show. It's driving us. And then usually we rationalize what the choices we're making. With our neocortex, we're rationalizing our emotions, pretending that that's really, that this thing really makes sense. But it often is, or whatever choice we made makes sense logically, but often it's just a feeling. So that's what I understood. I've understood by my reading. And so what was going on there? I have the emotional brain, which we're basically speaking to the emotional brain when I'm using emotions. Hello, yes, you're getting things done. It's incredible. Wow.
Yay, we love you.
Yay. I'm giving positive affirmation. And the emotional brain can't understand like language. It doesn't understand words, like specific words. It understands tonality and body language. So if I'm like, yeah, you just did the thing and I'm giving you positive response, right? Then that's what it's cueing off of. A lot of times when we're young, we're told in emotional terms, you're not enough. You're not lovable. You're not something, right? And a large portion of us have had this experience, and we're suffering from not being enough. Or we have a low-level identity that everywhere we go, we're trying to make sense of the world around us. And it's really that if we're told, or if we make the meaning when we're young, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, something like that, I'm not smart, I'll never be enough. Everything we see gives us, just reinforces that. And so if you dig into people's lives and that you ask them questions like this, you start to see this. And it's just like really blowing my mind how widespread of an issue this is.
So completely agreed. I mean, I always think about the 3 major problems with the world today is people think they are not loved, they're not safe, and they're not worthy. And if we could solve that problem and let everybody know that you are loved and you are safe and you are worthy, you solve world peace. Like you solve all the problems in humanity. And in my decade as a psychotherapist, I would have a client come into my office and I would tell them, you are worthy. And I'd say 80% would look at me and say, huh? How's that even possible?
Yeah.
And then I'd go back and say,
everything's told me that that's not the case. I don't believe you. Right. Yeah.
And I'd go back and say, well, is a baby worthy? And 95%, of course. Yes, a baby is worthy. Were you worthy as a baby? I don't think so.
Right.
And so it's like this fundamental disconnect that people are fundamentally worthy.
Yeah.
Just baseline. We are human beings. Right. We have worth, and people cannot feel it.
Yeah. So one of my best friends in the world, she grew up in Scandinavia, and there's this thing called the law of Yanda or something. I can't remember the exact pronunciation, but it basically means don't think you're better than anyone. And if you do, we're going to hit you down. And it's a great thing for survival, maybe through the long winters. I don't know. Everybody is super humble. And so it has its benefits, but it does have its problems too. So you can't try harder than anyone else. You don't want to stick out. You don't want to stand out. So that's a bit of an issue in certain respects, right? It's very nice for people when you're hanging out with them because they're absolutely humble and very aware of how they're interacting with other people. Good qualities. But this best friend of mine, she said, I really want to change this. Like, can you ego hack me? And can I become somebody who is not tormented by what other people are thinking so much, and become a little bit more of myself and a little bit more American or North American or something like that? And I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And so I kept telling this person, you are incredible. And I say it in emotional terms, like, you're so incredible. And so this person asked me to ego hack them. And again, because you have two different brains, the neocortex can understand this presentation, understand these words, understand all this logic. And you can even think, oh, well, it won't work on me because I know about it. But that's not true, because the limbic system, when I speak emotionally, when somebody speaks emotionally to you, it goes straight in. You cannot stop it. There's nothing you can do really to stop it. And that's what advertising is. It's programming us every day, and we don't understand how it's doing it. Well, ego hacking gives you the tools to understand how that's happening. And you can use this hopefully for good, because it's being used right now for all kinds of other purposes. It would be great to understand how it works and understand how you can be the person you want to be. So with this best friend of mine, started saying, like, just being emotional, saying, you're amazing. Like, I can't believe how amazing you are. And I'll just go repeatedly again and again. And finally, after about 3 months of this person was on an airplane and she was watching a sunset, and she said, wow, when I'm looking around and I'm seeing the meaning of these different things, I used to think I'm not enough, and the meaning would always go there. Like, that's how my mind would go. And now my mind is going to, I am enough. It was like a switch, just like a switch. Imagine it's like a neurological snowball. You've got a bundle of neurons, and they're all associated with I'm not enough. It's a big story, and it's big, and you're trying to make sense of the world, and you keep firing, and it keeps firing straight through this area. Well, now you're growing this evidence snowball of potential these dendritic, and they're all kind of connected, and they're building up potential. And then suddenly one day it switches, and it has more affinity for the new identity. That's happening, and that's what we're noticing. And that is the ultimate result of ego hacking. You use emotions to convince people's neurological networks beyond their neocortex. Even it doesn't matter what their neocortex says, and you convince them that they are enough, and you change and you allow their neurons to fire into meanings that are growth mindset, like Pearl Dweck stuff, about being enough and being capable of doing great things in this world and caring about other people, instead of the old programming, which is limiting, and it's the diminishing mindset. Imagine if growth mindsets like this, I would say diminishing mindsets like that. And
so growth mindset going up, diminishing going down, for anybody who's not watching the video. Yeah.
Yes. For anybody who's not watching the video. Yeah. Exponentially up versus exponentially down. And if you're programmed early on to not be enough, and every meaning you make in the world is, I can't do that, I'm enough, it won't work, it's not for me. Well, you're going to find whatever you look for in a complex world. You could call it the secret, call it whatever you want. Somehow a neurological network is pattern matching, and you want to be very careful about and understand what you're programmed with and what your identity is associated with, because positive or negative, you will find what you're looking for.
It's extremely beautiful. When you got to the story of the sunset and she recognized for the first time that she was enough, that the story didn't go to the negative place, it went to the place of fulfillment. I actually kind of started to cry. I got really choked up.
For her, it was the freedom that she experienced. It was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe, because we were going through trying all this ego hacking with different people, but I wasn't sure because I know I had that experience. But it was over many, many years, and for other reasons. And for I can think of all the evidence, but stretched out over time. And to have all of this happen with just 3 months, in 3 months of saying, hey, can you hack me? And then boom, to see that. And then I've had this theory that it must be like these snowballs. It's like you're building up identity snowballs. And once there's one that's bigger, the bigger meaning than the other one, it will start to fire through there. And you'll suddenly feel it just like that. Now, she did have, after that, a week later, So some challenges, she wasn't sleeping enough, whatever, basically lower level energy, a little depressed. And then it went back to the old one, but not for long. And once she built up and it just kept reinforcing itself, remember that it's like a reinforcing. Now she's going to find evidence everywhere she goes. The meat is going to start firing through there and it's just going to build. And she says that she just can't even imagine going back to the old way of being. It's just not possible anymore.
I think this is probably fundamentally resonating with a lot of people listening, because that sensation of, I'm not enough. Am I going to be able to accomplish? Can I do this? This is so pervasive. Right. Yeah. And it's, it's so much my mission in life to help people understand that doesn't need to be the way that you live.
Yeah.
That there is
and the work that you're doing, helping people see their minds and getting that feedback loop on their thoughts and awareness is beautiful. And I think a lot of this stuff is at least overlapping and, and can help both. I think both can play off each other and potentially help bring some peace.
Yeah, there's a different you underneath there. And the stories that you tell yourself are not necessarily you. And you can let go of those stories and you can be the different you. So I'm super curious, can you be very clear about the methodology that you're using? So someone who wants to ego hack themselves, what would they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. So I would say there's active and passive ego hacking, right? So let's say you really want to just go for it. You want to do some more active ego hacking. So what you do is you figure out who you want to be, and this can change over time. Whatever, figure out. Okay, I want to be somebody. You could just pick something. I want to get more things done. I want to see myself as lovable or enough. And then you say, okay, that's what I'm working on right now. So I need to get other people around me to tell me that, because again, I'll become what they say I am more than I'll become even what I want to be. Because for social cohesion, we're social beings, and biologically, we have to become what other people say much more quickly than and more efficiently than what other people would than what we would say ourselves. So, okay, I want to be enough. Okay. So I'm going to actively go to my friends and say, hey, I want to be enough. I want to see myself as lovable. Can you tell me that that's who you see me as? In fact, I'll even take it a step further. I learned about this ego hacking thing. Go check it out. See how it works. Let's talk about it. And then let's do it. Let's try it out. Just give it a shot. So now you have somebody who's on your side, who understands kind of the methodology and is trying to work with you. And you could both help each other. Oh, you want to get more things done. I want to be enough. Great. Let's help each other reinforce that. Because so often we see those things, but we just let them pass. We don't reinforce the positive that the person's trying to be. So this gives you this framework, and you start doing this. And in time, and it's like the more people you could get participating, the faster it goes. You need to build that emotional evidence snowball, neurological snowball, and it has to be bigger than the other meaning. The meaning of I'm not enough. It has to be that I'm enough. Has to be bigger, and then it will start firing there, and then you achieve a liftoff. It'll just keep reinforcing itself, and you won't be firing. Your brain won't be firing and seeing the old patterns. So
simple methodology. Step one.
Methodology.
Yep. Step one.
So step one is decide that you want to do this, and figure out what it is you want to become more of, and that you want to be enough. I want to get things done. Whatever the thing it is you want to be, and then get somebody else to help you. Either just tell them about it, or get them to go over the materials with you, and then actively practice it. So what will they be doing? They will say, hey, I just noticed that somebody just left you that little note on your door. Looks like you're lovable. Looks like people really love you. Imagine, you are enough. And it's not, and then they would do it not just with, you don't want to have one neocortex speaking to the other neocortex, because in that case, it's neocortex speaking to the other person's neocortex and expecting their neocortex to speak to their limbic system, saying, translate and say you're enough. That doesn't work, because again, it's coming from the same source. It has to be coming from the other person. And so the more emotional you can make it, hold on to their shoulders, hold on to their hand, give them give them a squeeze, look in their eyes, make your eyes bigger, whatever it is, emotional tonality, body language. That's what you want to do. And it's that much more powerful. So, and if you could get other people doing this, like 5 people in a room, yeah, this person is incredible. Don't you agree? Yes, you agree too. Wow. Yes, we all agree, right? Emotionally again. So it's that simple. Figure out what you want to be. Get other people to tell you that that's what you are. And if you want to speak about the past, about, not being enough, or, that part of you that wasn't enough, you want to get that out. Well, talk about it in the past. Well, in the past, I felt like I wasn't enough. But now I'm feeling like, more and more. In the past, I heard you saying you didn't feel like you were enough. But now I think you're seeing evidence, and I'm certainly seeing evidence that you are amazing. You're incredible. And you've always been incredible. Maybe you just weren't seeing that in the past. So again, does that make sense? That's the active model.
That is perfectly clear.
Yeah.
That's fantastic and incredibly simple.
This is so simple. And so you can go and I have workshop materials and stuff that people can, use it in a group and practice. And then, in the deck, if you go to bit.ly/egohack, EGOHACK, there are group exercises in there, and you could, with just another person, it'll say, okay, now ask each other this question, talk for a minute or two. And that's so powerful. Doing that piece is the most powerful. Otherwise, if you just look at it, you won't remember it, you won't feel it. And so we even do this exercise where we say, what I'm going to have you say to the other person in emotional terms, just talk about their shirt, talk about what they're wearing, and basically say that you don't like it. And make it up. Like, they're wearing a red shirt. Just say, was your blue shirt? You have a horrible blue shirt. I can't believe you would wear a blue shirt like that. All right. And so you give them a whole bunch in a row. And what happens at the end? They feel horrible. Even if you know that doesn't make any sense. You're not wearing a blue shirt. You're wearing suspenders, whatever. You're wearing something completely different. You're wearing a suit, jacket. Because of the tonality, you'll see that it goes straight in. Your logic doesn't matter. It's your emotions and the limbic system that hears it, and it can't tell if it's true or not. It just all goes straight in. So that proves right then and there to people, wow, this is really, really crazy. And then you give them 10 compliments in a row, and then it changes. Their entire this feeling like everybody wants to crawl out of the room and get out of there, even though it wasn't, and nothing was true that was said. Completely invented. And then you go, all right, we're going to hit you with a bunch of positives. And it turns out that in positive psychology, maybe you've heard of this, there's something called feedback ratios. And so there's, the Fredrickson and Gottman and all these people that have done tests around these things. And there's something around one positive to one negative feedback ratio. Like, if that's your experience, the emotional life, that feels really bad. It feels like, life is going to end. It feels like you just feel depressed, and you feel like maybe who knows what you want to do at that point. You want to solve that feeling. Now, if you can get yourself up to a more positive, like a 2 positive experiences or inputs to 1 negative, that's neutral. You feel okay. But if you can get yourself up to 4 or 5 positives to 1 negative, that feels incredible. That's a thriving ratio. And if you get up to 12 to 1, 12 positives to 1 negative, it feels horrible. It becomes disconnected and detached. Now, if you're in that 1-to-1 range, you have a 95% chance of divorce within a year. I think Gottman studied thousands of couples over 10 years. So people start to think it's all about, my spouse said you didn't take out the trash. And if you have a low feedback ratio, you might respond with, yeah, but you bounced the check last week and I couldn't buy more trash bags. But if you have a high feedback ratio, you'd be like, yeah, I just forgot. Sorry. What do you think I could do to fix that? So really, people think it's the details of what they're talking about, and they get in these tit for tat downward spirals and explode their relationship that is, hard fought and won. And it's a beautiful thing, but people get wrapped up in the feedback ratio, in the details instead of the feedback ratio. I always love to say it's the feedback ratio, stupid. That's not what you're saying. It's how you're saying it. It's the ratio. So raise the ratio. What happens when you raise the ratio is when you're in I could say an infinite number of positive things about anybody, or negative. I could, just sit here all day, negative or positive, whatever. Complex world, we can do that. So make sure you modulate your ratio and keep it such that people can hear you. Biologically, if you have a low feedback ratio, you have a lot of negative, people literally can't hear what you're saying. You're like, hey, you didn't take out the trash. Their pleasure, pain, their ego, that ego machine is trying to make themselves feel better, and they want the feedback ratio to go up. So for them to even hear you and to take on that idea just lowers it, and it creates more pain. And as we know, the pain, when you have ego pain, it's straight into the amygdala. You could take ibuprofen to dull in that social pain, but social pain is a real thing. And feedback ratios and identity and ego, like all of this stuff, it's real, really, really, really real. And if you want to get somebody to hear you, you don't want to be giving them so much negative that they can't. You want to give them enough positive in your everyday life. So when you need to say something like, hey, you need to take out the trash, or hey, I'm not feeling enough love from you today, or something, if they have enough positive and they're in that thriving range, they've got enough of a buffer, or you've got enough ego banking, as it's called, to actually hear somebody.
I'm sure there's lots of people who are wishing that their partner would listen to this little bit and their partner would change the number of positive to negative responses, or their parent.
Yeah. It's
or their boss.
Relationships, I think it's super important. When I started changing that, I used to notice I'd get myself, I needed to be right. But because it was like my feedback ratio, if it was low, or if I was creating a low feedback ratio of somebody else, I would not understand why this relationship's not working. And I would start thinking more about the details instead of just raising the ratio. When I would raise the ratio, magically things would fix. When you're in an argument with somebody, then somebody finally just, says, I'm sorry. I guess I could have, found the trash bags in the other bathroom or something. It's okay, because I probably shouldn't have exploded like that. And then once somebody gives in, basically what they're doing is they're saying they're changing the ratio. And when they change the ratio, then the other person instantly feels something different. And then they're compelled to act in a very different way toward you. So this is part of ego hacking.
So I have a question that I think might be on some people's minds.
Sure.
And that is, you're somebody, you want to change, you want it to be different, but it's actually even scary to go and ask somebody in your life to do this for you or with you. Even that can be a scary thing. How do you overcome that step?
Well, that's a great question, because then now you're in a prison of your own mind. You can't, it's too scary to go and talk to someone. Well, you can start with yourself. You can start to say to yourself, I see myself as somebody who is less and less scared to talk to people every day. In fact, I see myself as more and more confident and loving every day. I'm feeling more and more compassion every day. You can work on yourself to do that. You can have the self-talk, the ego hacking with yourself. It's not as powerful as other people doing it with you, but it can eventually have its ability to help. So you can do that, but then eventually, you really want to branch out to be able to get other people to help you. Now you could do it with somebody you don't have as much stake with. You could say to someone, hey, I don't know, would you go check out this link and let me know what you think? Yeah. Just check out that ego hacking thing. What do you think about that? No, then you don't have to have any fear. Just check it out and let me know what you think. And if they come back and say, "Oh, that's a pretty cool thing. I like that idea." Now you can say, "Oh, I like that idea too. What do you think? Maybe you want to try it."
Do you want to go on an ego hacking date with me, maybe?
Right. Yeah. You want to go on an ego hacking? You want to go get some coffee and talk ego hacking? But you can also do it passively. So here's how you can do ego hacking passively without even letting anyone know you're doing it. It's pretty simple. So let's say someone says, "Oh, good job getting that paper done." Now they're talking about something about getting things done, and that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to get more things done. Or let's say they said, "Wow, I love you. I really appreciate what you've done here." What you can do is emotionally say to them, turn around, look at them emotionally. Really? You think so? I'm so glad that you said that. That really means a lot for me. It really gives me the energy to keep trying hard and doing that. You really believe that? Yeah, you do? Great. Thank you so much for that feedback. Now you've just ego hacked them back. You basically just said, in a way, I really appreciate you saying that. And so what are they going to do in the future?
Say that more.
Say that more. Just really emotionally thank them. Instead of saying, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate that. That's one neocortex talking to another. It doesn't have a powerful effect. Hey, thanks. Great. I really appreciate that you doing that. Whatever. And, and I'm over dramatizing for this video a little bit. I mean, you got to keep it real. It's got to be, not annoying and weird. You want it to just, use a bit of emotion and thank them. And then they will feel inclined and inspired to continue to do that. So it becomes a virtuous loop, a feedback cycle. And that's how you can do it passively.
So one could take this information, which is amazing. This is so incredibly simple and such an amazingly powerful way to build relationships, build reinforcement, and bring out the best in one another. And, it's obvious hearing this that you can then apply this to all sorts of people in your life and give them reinforcement to help bring out the best.
Right.
You could also probably try to continue to shape them to who or what you want to be. You want them to be. But that's not the goal. This goal is to understand what somebody else's needs are, somebody else's desires for themselves, and in partnership with them, help and support who they want to become.
Absolutely. I would call it ethical ego hacking. Is you figure out what other people want to be and you help them become that. It's that simple. And you can, different people's ethics may vary, I guess, a little bit. Like some people may take a little bit more, I don't know. They might just decide, okay, I'm really sure that this person wants to be enough. And even if I haven't 100% confirmed that, I'm going to confirm it to some degree. I'm going to say, it sounds like you really want to be loved. It sounds like you really appreciate love. Is that true? And I say, yeah, that's actually very true. Very true. Great. Thanks for confirming that, because I see you as somebody who's extremely loved and worthy of love. You can ask for clarification and permission in different ways. So I think that to me is so important. I mean, you want to be certain that you're ego hacking people in the direction that they want to go. And I would advocate for more explicit and overt permission and awareness as possible.
Well, this is a really beautiful methodology with a really beautiful goal and a lovely end. Can we hear a little bit about how this has impacted some people? And the interest of sharing these stories is to inspire other people to recognize the shifts that you can make and the fulfillment that is possible. So if you are somebody who feels like you are not enough, there's a simple methodology that really can help you feel more. And I think so often we believe that because we feel some way, it must be true. And so there's this confirmation bias about ourselves and how we exist in the world that we just assume that because we think we're not enough, therefore, that must be true. The way that we feel must be the way it is. And as we learn in meditation and all of these practices and all of the world of psychotherapy and positive psychology, that is not the case. Our thoughts and self-perceptions are lying to us, and there really is the possibility for you to be another way, or you may already be this other way, and there are lots of methods that can help you uncover that.
Right. Absolutely. And suffer less, and then have the capacity to help other people along their paths of less suffering, hopefully. I mean, I think what you said about the world, there's, a few big problems in the world. And I think one of these problems, and it comes down to, sustainability, and it comes down to nation states, arguing over stupid things. A lot of it is ego debt. It's people don't understand how their egos work, and they don't understand how their egos are affecting them and large groups of people. So you said, how could this affect people? I think is what your question was.
Actually, let's back up a second. Can you talk about ego debt and how it's leading to the problems in the world? Can you close the loop for us on that?
Sure, absolutely. So I mentioned that when we have a low feedback ratio, like on average in life, it could be within a job, it could be within, at our job, we have a high feedback ratio, and then we go home and we have a low feedback ratio. But when we have a high feedback ratio, we can actually hear the negative. We can hear if somebody's giving us feedback, because it's not so low. We have ego banking. We have a buffer there. We can hear what people are saying. Actually, oh yeah, you don't think I didn't take out the trash? Tell me more about that. Something like that. But if you go too low, you've got below a 2-to-1 ratio on average, something like that. You want to solve it by one of 2 or 3 different strategies, 4 strategies maybe. So one of the common ones is, avoidance. You just kind of, it doesn't feel good, avoid it, right? That's pretty simple. Another one is, cover the bad feedback ratio. It just doesn't feel good. It's social pain covered up with, alcohol or something like that, that kind of dullens it. Now, the third way that people do this that isn't very helpful is to create a story that makes themselves feel better, but gets them out of touch with the average reality that everyone else is experiencing. I like to call that reality debt. So when your model of reality starts to become so different from what the other people's model of reality, or what the physical world's model of reality is, usually it correlates with what other people think reality is. When that is so different, now you're making decisions based on an incomplete model, or a model that's not matching what other people's models are. And then now you have this reality debt, this delta, and then you start to make bad decisions, really. So that can come back to haunt you eventually in your days of reckoning, whatever. And so that's the third, and that's a very, very common way that people try to solve the problems of that social pain. I'm going to create a story, and I'm going to tell you about it and tell you why I'm okay and why I'm right. And don't you agree? And please agree with me. And if you could just agree, then I'll know that I'm okay. And, and that solves my feedback debt, or my ego debt temporarily, but I wake up tomorrow and I don't feel good about it. So that the same thing can happen if I'm not enough. I'm like, oh, tell me how I'm enough. Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm okay. And feel like, you're good. You're right. You're right. You're right. And tomorrow I wake up and it's the same thing over again. You're not solving the root identity cause. So if you have this ego debt, the better way to deal with ego debt is to deal with it systemically. It's to deal with the cause. So how do you deal with the cause? Instead of creating stories that make you feel better temporarily, but get you out of touch with reality, it's better to get depressed. I'm not talking about chronic depression. By depressed, I mean it's better to pause and think about reality and try to get in touch with what reality is and try to make a change in your life. Maybe you don't go out partying with your friends this weekend. Maybe you stay home and you think about it. And that's normal. That's a good thing. Depression is healthy when it's not chronic. If you have chronic depression, you can't get out of it. Okay, that's a different problem. That's another discussion. But if you can, take a pause in your life and think about what's going on and try to make a change, now hopefully you're making changes that are fixing the root cause of the feedback that you're getting that isn't good. That's a healthy way to go. Get depressed, make a change, and healthy depression.
Unconventional wisdom, but makes sense.
Yeah.
So can you tell us some inspiring stories, people whose lives have been shifted with this?
Sure. So my friend who was wanting to get more things done, we get in Steve hack, and then when his snowball got big enough, it was just taking over his life. And he works so much, and he's so accomplished, and he just is now leading a team of professionals, and he's just like, this is amazing. It's the life I've been dreaming of. But the only downside is now that he is a workaholic. He's getting too many things done. So he's asking us to ego hack him so that he can spend more time with his friends. So you never know how those things go. You gotta be careful about balance, right? So maybe he was just going so hard at create this identity and reinforce this identity of getting things done that he forgot about keeping the balance there. So that's interesting. And the other, just to follow up on this other one, my good friend from Scandinavia. She we actually just said, because she had this issue where she was worried about being wrong all the time. She's worried about doing it wrong, being wrong. Somebody's going to tell her she's doing it wrong, so she'd just be wrapped up inside and all in life, and in every moment about, and then even get in these tit for tat downward spirals about who's right or something. And I said to her, I said, what if we're just both wrong? I'm going to be wrong. Let's be wrong. Let's be wrong all day. Who cares if we're right or wrong? It doesn't matter. So that was just this other ego hack that we can be wrong. It doesn't have to be, we can be wrong and have a growth mindset. And that really helped free her as well. And so she has said to me recently that the life that she had before was so much pain and so much ego debt and pain and wrapped up in just unhappy. She said that she wishes that everybody could have that peace, that things are okay, that we're okay, that she's lovable. She's like, I am lovable. That this is a great life. She couldn't believe it. It's blowing her mind. And I was so happy for her. I was practically crying for her freedom.
Oh, my greatest wish in life is for everybody to deeply know that they are enough and they are lovable.
Yeah.
And if everybody listening can take 1 second and take it in, Casey and I are going to tell you passionately right now, just going straight into your ears, you are enough.
You are enough. You are lovable. And there's evidence everywhere around you that shows you this. Just the fact that you're listening to this podcast right now shows that you care about these things and you care about people. You care about a better world. The evidence is everywhere. And if you in the past may have gotten thinking about that you're not enough, or kind of were told that, it's just a story. And it's just an identity snowball that got a little big in the past, and now you have a new snowball. And as you go through the next day of your life, you're probably going to notice something that's going to reinforce the fact that you are enough. And that snowball will grow, and you will start to change, and you will start to see this. And you and everybody, every time you see someone or you interact with somebody and they say to you something that reaffirms this, you're going to say, thank you so much for saying that. Thank you for telling me that, because I'm really working on remembering that I am enough. And this helps me remember that. And as time goes on and the months go by and you see more and more evidence of this, someday it'll surprise you. It'll just come down like a ton of bricks. You'll be watching a sunset, something, you'll be somewhere thinking about yourself, and you'll be instantly surprised about the fact that you are enough, and you'll know it and you'll feel it in your intuition. So yes, here we go.
Amazing. Feel free to go back and rewind the last couple minutes and listen to that over and over and over again. Anybody listening, because it is so fundamentally true. You are enough.
Absolutely. So true.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for this beautiful piece of knowledge, this very helpful technique. If people want to find out more about it, they can go to...
just go to bit.ly/egohack. They can also, I have other links. I have some workshop materials, and they're welcome to message me, Facebook, or send an email to Casey@CaseyFenton.com, and simply just say, hey, can you send me the ego hacking materials? And I'd be love to just share them, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. So this is stuff I'm super passionate about. I think that it can really unlock so much potential in this world. And I mean, it's really hard to make a better world when we're all just trying to survive, and we're worried if we're not enough. If we are enough, then we have one of our most important basic needs met, that of identity. And when that's met, we're no longer tormented and distracted by it. We have the extra capacity to help others and to make this world the world it needs to be for us to survive.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for letting us inside your head, inside your heart, and helping us understand a little bit more about each of our egos and how we can begin to repair them.
Very good. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be in the call and on the show.
Awesome.